The Zarkak's High Council chamber fell silent as the intelligence officer's hologram flickered above the central table. Grand Marshal Vextier leaned forward, his iridescent scales reflecting the dim light as he studied the images of Earth's latest space vessel. "This is what has our border patrols concerned," he asked, mandibles clicking in barely concealed amusement. "A ship carrying industrial cleaning supplies?" Intelligence Officer Mirex nodded, her crystalline form pulsing with nervous energy. "Yes, Marshal. Our scans detected large quantities of what humans call sodium hypochlorite in a highly concentrated form. They claim it's for maintenance of their deep space colonies, but the quantities seem excessive." "Bleach?" Captain Olivia Harrison asked innocently from where she stood in the containment field, her weathered face maintaining a carefully neutral expression. The Zarkaks had intercepted her cargo vessel near the Proxima Centauri colony route and brought her in for questioning. "We use it to maintain sterile conditions in our hydroponic farms. Surely your species understands the importance of cleanliness. In space?" Grand Marshal Vextier's secondary eyes narrowed. The humans seemed too calm for someone in custody, yet their scans had detected no energy weapons, no plasma arrays, not even primitive projectile launchers. Just tanks of this cleaning solution and some peculiar modification to the ship's ventilation systems. "Our analysis shows you've modified this chemical compound," First Science Director Kellnor interjected, his tentacles waving in agitation. "The concentration is far higher than necessary for cleaning purposes." Harrison shrugged. "Different crops need different sanitization protocols. Would you like me to explain our agricultural methods?" "What we'd like," Vextier rumbled, "is to understand why these cleaning vessels keep appearing near our military installations." "Perhaps," Harrison suggested mildly, "your installations are dirty." Before Vextier could respond, alarms blared throughout the chamber. A junior officer burst through the doors, his scales pale with panic. "Marshal, 3 human vessels just dropped out of FTL. They're spraying something into space." Vextier turned back to Harrison, who was now smiling. "Still just cleaning supplies?" "Oh yes," she replied, her smile widening. "You see, we discovered something interesting about your advanced hull plating. It's quite similar to organic matter in its molecular structure. And you know what's really good at breaking down organic matter?" The chamber's atmospheric sensors screamed to life as traces of chlorine gas began seeping through the station's supposedly impenetrable hull. Vextier watched in horror as the metal itself began to deteriorate. "Bleach," Harrison continued calmly, pulling out a small rebreather from her pocket. "When properly modified and combined with other common cleaning agents, becomes quite aggressive toward certain molecular structures, like your hull plating, for instance. We tried telling your border patrols it was a dangerous substance they should take seriously, but they insisted it was, and I quote, not even a weapon." The containment field flickered and died as the station's power systems began failing. Outside the viewing windows, Vextier could see 3 human ships systematically spraying their cleaning solution in precise patterns, effectively eating through the outer defenses of the Zarkak's most secure military installation. "Impossible," First Science Director Kellner whispered, his tentacles trembling. "You weaponized cleaning supplies?" "Technically," Harrison corrected, fitting her rebreather into place as chaos erupted around them. "We weaponized the chemistry behind cleaning supplies. Big difference. While you were developing energy weapons and plasma cannons, we were mastering the art of breaking down molecular bonds. Sometimes the simplest solutions are the most effective." "Why?" Vextier demanded, struggling to maintain his composure as his mighty station literally dissolved around him. "Why attack us this way?" "Attack?" Harrison raised an eyebrow. No. This is just a demonstration. You see, after you dismissed our warnings about expanding into Earth-controlled space as the threats of an inferior species, we decided you needed a cleaning lesson. Sometimes you need to strip everything down to its basic components and start fresh. Now shall we discuss new terms for peaceful coexistence? Once we're done with this deep cleaning, of course." Vextier stared at the human captain, finally understanding the terrible truth. His species had gravely underestimated humanity's capacity for turning the mundane into the devastating. They hadn't just weaponized a cleaning solution. They had weaponized human ingenuity itself. And somewhere in the back of his mind he wondered what other, harmless substances humans might have learned to use as weapons. Perhaps, he realized, with growing dread, it was time to revise the Zarkax's dismissive policy toward Earth's technological capabilities. The emergency session of the Zarkax High Council bore little resemblance to its usual ordered proceedings. Delegates from across their empire crowded the vast chamber, their scales shifting through anxious colors as they watched footage of their supposedly impregnable military station dissolving under the human chemical assault. Fleet Admiral Dexton, his scales a mottled pattern of stress. Induced grays and blacks stood before the assembly. The damage extends beyond Station 09. Analysis shows that traces of these human cleaning agents have contaminated our quantum communication relays across 3 sectors. A low murmur of horror rippled through the chamber. The Zarkax prided themselves on having the most advanced communication network in known space. Now it was being undone by what humans use to sanitize their living spaces. Preposterous! Supreme Counselor Yaxvi's voice boomed across the chamber. Are we to believe that a species that hasn't even mastered gravitational manipulation has found a way to bypass our defensive systems with household products? The massive doors of the chamber swung open and First Science Director Kelnor hurried in, his tentacles clutching a data crystal. The usually composed scientist looked distinctly rattled. Honored Council, he began, his voice trembling. We've completed our initial analysis of the human weapon. It's worse than we thought. The chamber's holographic display activated, showing molecular diagrams that shifted and changed as Kelnor explained. The humans didn't just weaponize cleaning supplies. They created a programmable molecular solvent that specifically targets certain atomic structures. It's elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its implications. Commander Raxhal, the highest-ranking survivor from Station 09, stepped forward. His scale still bore the chemical burns from the attack. What do you mean, implications? The humans understand molecular engineering on a level we never considered practical, Kelnor continued. While we focused on manipulating energy and gravity, they mastered chemistry. Their weapon isn't just corrosive, it's selective. It can dissolve our hull plating while leaving their own ships untouched. The display shifted to show footage from the attack. The human vessels, seemingly primitive by Zarkax standards, maneuvered with precision as they deployed their weapon. The Council watched in silence as their mighty station's outer layers simply ceased to exist. But surely this is the extent of their capability? Yaxvi demanded. One lucky discovery they've managed to exploit? A harsh laugh interrupted the proceedings. All eyes turned to Dr. Zena Patel, the human scientist who had been brought in for consultation. She stood in her containment field, looking remarkably unconcerned for a prisoner. You still don't get it, do you? She asked, shaking her head. This isn't about one weapon. It's about how humans think. You see something as just a cleaning agent. We see its molecular structure, its reactive properties, its potential. She gestured to the display still showing the dissolving station. You know what humans call that level of destruction? A proof of concept, a demonstration. Want to know what else we've weaponized that you wouldn't consider weapons? The chamber fell silent, waiting. Your atmospheric processors? They use calcium hydroxide filters, don't they? Funny thing about calcium hydroxide, mix it with the right catalysts and it becomes explosive. Those quantum communication relays, they use crystalline matrices that can be shattered by specific sonic frequencies. Even your food synthesizers could be reprogrammed to create chemical compounds that would make this cleaning solution look harmless. You're bluffing, Yaxvi snarled, but his scales had paled considerably. Am I? Patel smiled. Check your industrial accident reports from the past year. Notice any patterns? Small explosions in processing plants? Mysterious equipment failures? We've been leaving breadcrumbs, hoping you'd take the hint and reconsider your expansion plans. But you kept dismissing everything we did as not even real weapons. Fleet Admiral Dexton's scales shifted to a deep blue of revelation. The mining colony failures, the atmospheric processing plant explosions. All demonstrations, Patel confirmed. Very small, very controlled demonstrations. Because unlike you, we don't want war. We just want you to understand that underestimating humanity's ability to weaponize the everyday isn't just wrong, it's dangerous. The chamber erupted in chaos as delegates began shouting over each other. Some called for immediate military action, others for diplomatic solutions. But underlying it all was a new emotion. Fear. Not of human warships or armies, but of their understanding of the fundamental building blocks of the universe. Supreme Counselor Yaxvi raised his arms for silence. When the chamber quieted, he turned to Patel. "What are your terms?" "Simple," she replied. "Respect our borders. Treat us as equals. And most importantly, stop dismissing things as harmless just because they don't fit your definition of a weapon. Because trust me, if humans can find a way to weaponize cleaning supplies, imagine what we could do with things that are actually designed to be dangerous." As the council began drafting an emergency response, Dr. Patel smiled to herself. Sometimes the best way to prevent a war was to show your potential enemy exactly how devastating it would be, using nothing more than what they considered harmless. Inside the Zarkak's Central Research Laboratory, First Science Director Kellnor's tentacles moved frantically across multiple holographic displays. The chamber, normally pristine and ordered, had become a chaos of data streams, molecular models, and scattered research materials. Teams of the Empire's brightest minds worked in shifts, trying to understand the full scope of human chemical warfare capabilities. "Play it again," he commanded, and the security footage from a recent human demonstration filled the main screen. This time, it wasn't a military installation under attack. It was an abandoned mining outpost they'd provided for the humans to prove their point. Dr. Marcus Wong, Earth's chief chemical engineer, stood beside him, having been invited as part of the new diplomatic arrangements. "Notice how we're not just dissolving materials randomly," he explained, pointing to specific parts of the footage. "We can target precise structural weaknesses. It's like molecular surgery." The footage showed various common substances, cleaning, agents, industrial solvents, even food preservatives, being deployed in ways that defied Zarkak's understanding of chemistry. One section of the outpost dissolved into dust while another remained untouched. Support beams liquefied while nearby walls stood firm. "Impossible," muttered research specialist Tixara, her scales shifting through shades of confusion. "These are simple compounds, basic maintenance materials. How can you achieve such precise effects?" Wong smiled. "That's because you're thinking about them as individual substances. We think about them as building blocks. Every molecule is a tool waiting to be redesigned." He gestured to a molecular diagram floating nearby. "Take this cleaning compound. You see a simple sodium hypochlorite solution. We see potential energy, waiting to be released. Add a catalyst here. Modify the electron structure there, and suddenly it's not just cleaning. It's systematically dismantling molecular bonds." Kellnor's secondary heart began pulsing rapidly as understanding dawned. "You're not just using these substances, you're redesigning them at the molecular level." "Exactly," Wong confirmed. "While your civilization was mastering plasma weapons and gravity manipulation, we were learning to understand matter itself. Necessity drove us to look at everything as a potential resource. When you can't bend gravity, you learn to bend chemistry instead." The laboratory's main door slid open, admitting High Commander Vextier. His scales had never quite recovered their luster after the cleaning solution incident. "Tell me you found a defense against these human weapons." Kellnor's tentacles drooped. "Commander, it's not that simple. They're not just using one weapon. They're turning everything into a potential weapon. Look at this analysis." The displays shifted to show data from various human demonstrations. Each one utilized different everyday substances in increasingly creative ways. Industrial lubricants that could disable energy shields. Food preservatives that, when properly modified, could interfere with quantum communications. Even atmospheric scrubbers that could be reprogrammed to create localized zones of highly corrosive gas. "The truly frightening part," Wong added, almost cheerfully, "is that these are just the simple applications. We haven't even shown you what we can do with more complex compounds. Simple? Vextier's scales paled. You call this simple? From our perspective, yes. Wang walked to another display, bringing up a series of chemical formulas. These are all based on basic chemistry, the kind of science we teach our children. We haven't even started discussing our advanced molecular engineering programs. Tixera, who had been quietly analyzing the data, suddenly straightened. By the first stars, they're not weapons at all, are they? They're tools. You've just changed their purpose. Now you're getting it. Wang nodded approvingly. Everything is a tool. Whether it becomes a weapon depends entirely on how you use it. That cleaning solution? It's still excellent at maintaining sterile conditions in our hydroponic farms. We just found other applications for it. Vexter moved closer to the displays, his military mind finally grasping the implications. Your entire civilization thinks this way, doesn't it? Everything you encounter, everything you create, you're always looking for multiple uses. It's how we survived, Wang explained. Earth isn't the most resource-rich planet. We had to learn to be creative, to see potential in everything. When you have limited resources, you learn to make each one count in multiple ways. Kelnor's tentacles suddenly went rigid. The trading agreements we've been negotiating, all those requests for seemingly random industrial and household supplies, are exactly what we say they are, Wang assured him. We genuinely need them for their intended purposes. But yes, if you force us into a conflict, every single one of those materials could be repurposed. The laboratory fell silent as the implications sank in. The Zarkax had spent centuries developing dedicated weapons, always pushing toward more powerful energy beams, more devastating torpedoes. Meanwhile, humanity had turned their entire civilization into one vast arsenal, where even the most mundane objects could become weapons of extraordinary precision. Perhaps, Vexetier said slowly, we should revise our military doctrine. Traditional defenses seem inadequate against an enemy who can turn cleaning supplies into weapons of mass destruction. Or, Wang suggested, you could accept that we're not your enemy at all. We're potential allies who simply see the universe differently than you do. Everything can be a weapon, yes, but everything can also be a tool for cooperation and growth. The choice is yours. As the Zarkax scientists returned to their analysis, a new understanding began to emerge. They weren't just studying human weapons technology. They were learning an entirely new way of thinking about the fundamental nature of matter and its potential. The Galactic Security Summit on Zarkax Prime was unlike any in the Empire's history. Representatives from every major spacefaring species had gathered, drawn by rumors of humanity's unconventional warfare capabilities. The massive amphitheater buzzed with nervous energy as delegates from a dozen worlds shared their own encounters with human ingenuity. High Commander Vexetier stood at the central podium, his scales now permanently tinged with the gray of chronic stress. Behind him, a holographic display showed footage from various human demonstrations across the galaxy. The NX Thari defense fleet lost 3 capital ships last month, he announced, triggering a new recording. Not to human warships, but to what humans call rust. They somehow accelerated the oxidation process to occur in minutes rather than centuries. Ambassador Krell of the NX Thari, their crystalline form dimmed with embarrassment, rose to speak. We thought they were bluffing when they warned us about expanding into their claimed territories. Our sensors detected no weapons on their ships, just tanks of what they claimed was iron oxide catalyst. The display shifted to show the NX Thari ships literally rusting away in space, their mighty hulls crumbling like autumn leaves. The Mu assembly watched in horrified fascination. The Meridian Collective reports similar encounters, another voice called out. Ambassador Yu Chen of Earth, sitting calmly in the observers section, noticed it was the Meridian's chief of defense. They neutralized our plasma cannon arrays with, what did you call it, Ambassador Yu? Baking soda, Yu replied pleasantly. Sodium bicarbonate, to be precise. When properly modified and dispersed, it creates a fascinating reaction with plasma energy. Though honestly, we only used that because we ran out of the cleaning solution that day. A ripple of nervous laughter ran through the assembly, quickly, silenced by the realization that he wasn't joking. "This cannot continue," declared Supreme Counselor Yaxvi, his scales shifting through patterns of authority and concern. "The stability of galactic commerce depends on predictable military dynamics. How can we maintain order when humans can turn cooking ingredients into weapons of mass destruction?" Yu Chen stood, his diplomatic robes rustling softly. "Perhaps that's exactly the point we've been trying to make. You all think in terms of dedicated weapons, of military dynamics, of force projection. We think in terms of possibility." He gestured to the display, which now showed a montage of human weapons in action. "Everything you've seen, the cleaning solutions, the rust accelerants, the modified food preservatives, these are all messages, not of threat but of perspective." "Explain," demanded the Centaurian delegate, their neural pathways glowing with intensity. Each demonstration shows the same truth. Everything can be more than what it seems. That maintenance solution? It's excellent for keeping ships clean and for defending our borders. That rust accelerant? Perfect for recycling old equipment and for showing why unauthorized incursions into our space are unwise. Yu paused, letting his words sink in. "But here's what you're missing. For every substance we've shown you can be weaponized, we've developed dozens of peaceful applications. The same principles that let us turn cleaning supplies into weapons also let us terraform hostile planets, purify contaminated atmospheres, and heal previously incurable diseases." The assembly stirred uneasily. High Commander Vextier's scales shifted to a deep blue of revelation. "You're not just showing us your weapons capability. We're showing you how we think," Yu confirmed. "Humans don't see single-purpose tools. We see potential. Everything in the universe has multiple applications, for peace or for war, for creation or destruction. The choice of how to use that knowledge is what matters." A new delegate stood, Admiral Koss of the Proximan Federation, known for their strategic brilliance. "Then why show us the destructive applications first?" Yu smiled diplomatically. "Because that's what you understand. You respect weapons. So we showed you weapons. But now that we have your attention, we can show you something far more valuable. How to see the universe through human eyes." He waved his hand, and the display changed to show human agricultural ships using modified versions of the same chemicals to terraform dead worlds, to purify toxic atmospheres, to create life where none existed before. "Those cleaning solutions that dissolved your station," Yu continued. "They're treating pollution in 1,000 dying oceans across the galaxy. The rust accelerant? It's breaking down space debris that would threaten all our ships. Every weapon we've demonstrated has a dozen peaceful applications that could benefit all species." The assembly fell silent, processing this paradigm shift. They had gathered to discuss a military threat, only to discover they were being offered a new way of understanding the fundamental nature of matter and its possibilities. Supreme Counselor Yaxvi's scales shifted to the deep green of decision. "You speak of choice, Ambassador Yu. What choice are you offering us?" "The same choice we offer everyone," Yu replied. "You can continue to see us as a threat, forcing us to demonstrate more creative applications of household products. Or you can join us in exploring the full potential of everything around us. We're not interested in conquest. We want partners who understand that the universe is far more flexible than it appears." As the assembly erupted in discussion, High Commander Vextier found himself studying his own scales, thinking about the chemical processes that created their color-changing properties. For the first time, he wondered what other possibilities lay hidden in that everyday phenomenon. Perhaps he realized that was exactly the kind of thinking humans had been trying to teach them all along. One standard galactic year after the Security Summit, the gleaming spires of the newly established Interspecies Innovation Center rose from the surface of a once-dead world. Where toxic wastelands had stretched to the horizon, verdant fields now bloomed. The same human-modified compounds that had once dissolved starship hulls were now rebuilding an entire planet. Dr. Zena Patel stood at the observation deck, watching teams of human and alien scientists working together below. Beside her, first, Science Director Kellnor's tentacles waved in patterns of excitement as they reviewed the latest project data. To think, he mused, his scales shimmering with iridescent wonder. A year ago, we were terrified of your cleaning solutions. Now, we're using modified versions to restore dead worlds. Funny how perspective changes everything, Xena replied, smiling as she watched a Zarkex researcher enthusiastically explaining molecular restructuring principles to a group of Centaurian students. Though I have to admit, some of your recent innovations have surprised even us. On the testing grounds below, a team of Nexthari crystalline beings were demonstrating their new environmental restoration technology, inspired by studying how humans had weaponized rust. They had learned to reverse engineer the process, using it to extract toxic metals from contaminated environments. High Commander Vextier, now serving as the center's security director, approached them with his scales showing the deep blue of satisfaction. The latest reports from the Meridian sector are in. The modified atmospheric processors have eliminated the toxic gas clouds that have plagued their colonies for centuries. The same processors you once feared we'd turn into weapons? Xena asked with a knowing smile. Precisely. Vexitier's scales flickered with amusement. Though we maintain careful security protocols, not everyone has embraced this new paradigm. A holographic display activated, showing various projects across the facility. In one chamber, human chemical engineers worked alongside Zarkex scientists, teaching them how to see beyond traditional applications of common materials. In another, alien researchers shared their advanced energy manipulation techniques, helping humans refine their molecular engineering processes. Ambassador Yu was right, Kellner observed. The real weapon was never the chemicals or compounds, it was the way humans think about them. Everything is a tool, Xena agreed. The only question is whether we use it to break or to build. The facility's central alarm chimed softly, announcing the arrival of an important delegation. The observation deck's doors slid open to admit Supreme Counselor Yaxvi, accompanied by representatives from 12 spacefaring species. Their visit marked the first anniversary of the Adaptive Technologies Treaty. Most honored guests, Vextier greeted them, his scales shifting to formal patterns. Welcome to what you once feared would be humanity's weapons research facility. And instead, Yaxvi replied, his own scales showing patterns of wisdom and humility. We found something far more powerful, a new way of understanding the universe itself. The delegation moved to the windows, watching the activity below. In one area, human maintenance compounds were being used to repair environmental damage. In another, modified food preservatives were being transformed into medical treatments. Every substance that had once been demonstrated as a potential weapon was now being used to create, to heal, to restore. The latest statistics are remarkable, reported the Centaurian delegate, their neural pathways glowing brightly. Planetary restoration projects up 300%. Medical breakthroughs in cellular regeneration. Even our waste recycling efficiency has improved dramatically. All because we learned to stop asking, "What is this?" and started asking, "What else could this be?" Xena nodded toward a group of young alien scientists eagerly studying molecular diagrams. That's the real breakthrough. The next generation isn't dividing substances into weapons and non-weapons. They're seeing everything as possibility. Though we still maintain robust defense capabilities, Vextier added quickly, ever the security officer. Just because we're using these discoveries for peace doesn't mean we've forgotten their other applications. Of course, Xena agreed. But now everyone understands that escalating conflicts with humans doesn't end with just facing our weapons. It means missing out on all this. She gestured to the thriving facility around them. As if to emphasize her point, a cheer erupted from one of the research stations below. A team of mixed species had just successfully transformed a common industrial solvent into a cure for a previously fatal genetic disease. You know what the most interesting development has been? Kellnor asked, his tentacles forming patterns of contemplation. Other species are starting to innovate in similar ways. The Nexthari crystals, the Meridian energy matrices, everyone, is beginning to see multiple possibilities in everyday things. Supreme Counselor Yaxvi moved to the center of the observation deck, addressing the assembled delegates. 1 year ago, we gathered in fear of humanity's ability to turn anything into a weapon. Today, we gather in celebration of their ability to turn anything into a tool for progress. Perhaps that was their most powerful weapon all along, the ability to make us see beyond our own limitations. As the delegation continued their tour, Xena returned to watching the researchers below. A young Zarkak scientist was excitedly explaining to her human colleague how she'd discovered a way to use modified cleaning compounds to power atmospheric processors. The human was already suggesting additional applications. "It's not even a weapon," Xena murmured, echoing the phrase that had once caused so much concern. It never was. It was always just potential, waiting to be understood. Beyond the facility's windows, the restored planet's twin suns set on a world that had been transformed not by dedicated weapons or tools, but by the simple human idea that everything in the universe could be more than what it seemed. The most powerful force in the galaxy, it turned out, wasn't any particular weapon. It was the ability to see possibility where others saw limitations.